Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Victor. This video is part of the series I created for the course that I'm teaching titled Object-Oriented Design in Java. This course assumes that students have some experience in other programming languages like C, C++, and Python, and some basic ideas in data structures like lists, stacks, and queues. Currently, there isn't a lab component in this course, so I thought it would be helpful to do a little bit of demo as well as explanation for some of the materials that I cover in the course. This may also be helpful for those of you who are starting to learn Java. In this video, I am going to go through the steps of setting up the IntelliJ IDE for Java and to write our very first Java program. I'll also show how methods are called in the Java code using a simple example. Let's begin. To start, we first download the IntelliJ IDE from the official website. There are other IDEs like Eclipse and BlueJ, but here we're going to stick with IntelliJ. And the landing page, you're going to click the download, and you'll see two options. The ultimate version is definitely going to be more powerful, but after 30 days of trial, you are going to pay for that. It's worth paying for that, but here we are going to stick with the free version, which is the community version. And it is going to be sufficient for our purposes. So let's say we download this file, and then it's going to download in our hard drive. Now, once you have IntelliJ downloaded, you can run the executable from here, and it will be installed onto your computer. When done, if you're using Windows, you can press the Windows key and type the word IntelliJ, I-N-T-E-L-L-I-J. This will bring up the application icon for you to start the application. If you're using Mac, you can use the Spotlight feature or function in Mac and look for the same thing, IntelliJ. If this is the first time you use IntelliJ, it will first show you a dialog asking you what to do next. You're going to choose New Project and follow what I'm going to do next. If you have already opened or used IntelliJ before and have a project open and you quit the program, you will see something like this. No matter what, we're going to create a new project from within IntelliJ. So first go to File on the top, choose New, and then we're going to choose Project. Now, there are several ways to create an IntelliJ Java project using some managers, including Maven or Gradle. Here we are going to start from scratch. So we're going to choose Empty Project from the left panel in the dialog, and we are going to give our project a name. So let's say we give it a name called, say, my first Java program. And you can also choose where you want to put this project into. So I'm going to just leave it as the default location. What IntelliJ is going to do is it is going to create a directory or folder under the same name that we have just typed in, and then put all the things that's related to our Java program into it. So once we are done, we can click Create, and IntelliJ is going to do its own internal processing, and it's going to create such a project with all the stuff. It's going to ask you whether you want to create a new window, or you're going to just use the same window and open the project that you have just created. So we choose using this same window. All right, so now we are at a new window for the our very first Java project or Java program project. So you can see that IntelliJ has already created a bunch of things for us. If you have your File Explorer opened, you actually will be able to see something in your File Explorer that essentially is just creating a bunch of files for you. Anyway, so let's begin with creating some code, Java code in this project. To do that, we are going to click onto the left-hand side panel. If it doesn't show up, chances are it's just being collapsed. So you can click on the very left side, or you can press Alt-1, and then you will see this little project window pulling up. Now we're going to create our first file. So we right-click on the very top in the project, and then we're going to choose New and then Java class. Then it's going to ask you what is the name of your class, and let's give it a good name. So let's say we can use actually the same name as before. So we can use let's call it my program. Right, my program. So essentially, we are going to create a file with this name called my program, which exists underneath our project called my first Java program. So once we're happy, we just press enter. You'll see that it's going to create a little file called my program. Right. And inside this my program, you're going to see something is already created for us. Here you can see the keyword public and class is being turned into blue color, indicating that this is something that is recognized in Java as keyword. And then my program is what we have just typed in. It's kind of gray in color right now because we haven't really done much with that anyways. All right, so we have what we call a source code file. What we're going to do is we are going to write our very first Java program here. Inside our curly bracket, we're going to create a very special method. This method is going to be the entry point of your Java application or Java program. There's a very standard way to do that, and I'm going to show you how to write it. First of all, you need to use the keyword public, so public, and then space, and then static, static, and then void. Next, you're going to give a name to this method, and this name is also very specific. It's called main. And for the parameter for this method, it's going to be an array of string called arguments. And then once you have that, you can type whatever you want for this program. In IntelliJ, it actually provides a very useful shortcut for that. So let's say I did not type this. So I just erase everything, and then I type PSVM. So you see that it's showing us something. And when I press enter, it automatically generates the public static void main and string array arguments for us. Because we will use that very often. Every time we create a Java application or program, we will need this as our entry point. That's why IntelliJ creates something nice for us. Now, inside this function or method, we are going to do one thing. We're going to just print, the super popular hello world line to the console. So how do you do that? To do that, we are going to call a specific printing method provided by Java to do so. So how do we use that? So the way to do that is we type system dot out dot print ln, stands for line, and we have a bracket or parenthesis. Inside, we put in a string telling Java to print the following sentence. Let's use hello world. So hello world. And then we surround that with the double quote to indicate that it is a string. At the end, we use a semicolon to indicate that it is a statement. So basically, this is our, some of the most simplest function or method that we create for our program. So let's give it a run. So when we first create a Java source code, the first thing we want to do is we want to build this project. Because when our project becomes more sophisticated with more files, more source code, more resources, there is a process where we have to first build this whole thing into an executable first, or program first. So we start by doing so, clicking build, and then IntelliJ is going to go through some building, linking processes, and then it should be done in some time, depending on how fast your computer is. So I'm going to wait for a few seconds. Hopefully it should be done in a few seconds. All right, and by the magic of video editing, we have our first program being built. Now, of course, we can still see the source code only. The next step we're going to do is we're going to run our executable. So the next thing we want to do is we click on the run at the top of the menu, and then we choose run. Now, typically, IntelliJ is going to ask us from where are we going to run our program. Now, remember that every project will have an entry point, right? So later on, you will see examples where there will be multiple entry points depending on how you want to run your program. In one single project, you can have multiple entry points, but at the end of the day, when you start to run a program, you need to choose an entry point. In this example, we only have one entry point, which is what we have just written. So there's only one option here. Later on, there might be more, then you will have to choose. In our case, we only need to choose the my program, which is a class having that entry point public static void main. So we're going to choose this guy, and then IntelliJ is going to run the executable defined here. So you see that now it is going to do a little bit of thinking, and the console at the bottom is going to show us hello world as we have expected, right? So this is our very first Java program saying hello world. Now next we're going to try to define a method so that our program becomes, our code becomes a little bit more versatile or useful. So let's say I want to have a method or function to print out what is my favorite coffee. So I will have a method called void, and then show my, let's call it show my favorite coffee. And then I'm going to make it a little bit useful so that I'm going to take in a string as a parameter. And then inside, I'm going to use the same thing, way to print things in the console, but now I'm going to print a sentence, say my favorite coffee is, and then use that parameter or argument to show what is actually my favorite coffee. Now, we can still type system.out.println, but in IntelliJ, we also have a shortcut to type it much quicker. So to do that, we type sout, S-O-U-T. You can see that there's a little pop-up over here, and then when we press enter, IntelliJ automatically replace that with system.out.println. Again, it's a very commonly used method call, so that's why IntelliJ decided to help us to type it faster. So inside, I'm going to type our standard part of our sentence. So say my favorite coffee is, and then I'm going to do this thing called string concatenation. So string concatenation basically is to stitch two strings objects together and make it into a longer string composing of those two strings. So here I'm going to use COFFEE, which is the argument, and that's basically it. Now the next thing I want to do is, of course, I need to call my method. So I'm going to type show my favorite coffee, and I'm going to call this with an argument. So let's say my favorite coffee type, bean type is actually Kona, right. And then I'll just close it with a semicolon. Now we'll see that IntelliJ actually tries to draw a little like red underline below the calling of the method. We'll come back to that later on. But let's try to do the same thing. Let's build a project and try to run our program to see what's going to happen. So you see that now there's an error. It's at the bottom. It says that non-static method show my favorite coffee cannot be referenced from a static context. So of course it means that something is wrong. So how do we fix it, and what's causing the error? It turns out that in Java, typically a method cannot exist on its own, and it has to be associated with an object. So one way to do that is we actually create an object so that we can associate or call a method that is associated to that object. So this is one way to do that. In our entry point, which is the main method, we are going to create such an object. Let's say, and what is the type of the object? So the type is actually going to be my program. The reason why is that this method, show my favorite coffee, is defined within this my program class. So I'm going to use the type. Typically this is called self, and then I'm going to use new my program. But by doing so, I'm going to create an instance or object of this my program class. The next, I'm going to use self dot, which is a dot operator of this object, to call the function that or the method is associated to this object. So you see that the red line has been removed because now we have an object and we can associate or call the method that is associated to this object. So this method actually exists. So with that, we can try to build our program again. And you can see that now seems everything is fine. There's no red thing showing up. The next thing is we are going to run this program. And you can see that now on top of the hello world that we previously have, we also have the line, my favorite coffee is Kona. And Kona is being attached to the standard line, my favorite coffee is. Now, there is another way to make a method to exist on its own. And it is to make this method into what we call a static method. And this will turn this method to exist or belong to the class instead of an object. So let's say I get rid of these two lines. So the way to comment out lines in Java, by the way, is to use the two slashes, similar to or the same as C and C++. So over here, we are going to call this method again. So show my favorite coffee. And I'm going to say Kona again. And you see the red line comes back. Now, but what we can do is we can type the keyword static when we are defining the method show my favorite coffee. What it does, again, is going to turn this method into a method that belongs to a class. And if we try to build this function again, build this project again, we are going to see that there is no error. Now, let's give it a wait, and we are going to run this program again. You see that nothing goes wrong, and it is printing what we want. All right, so there you have it. Our very first Java program created in IntelliJ. In the following videos, I'm going to go over more examples, including adding libraries, using libraries, creating GUIs, and later on using Spring Boot. I hope you learned something useful in this video, and if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Hope to see you soon again. Bye.